she sat me down, she looked me in the eyes. And after a little bit of dialogue, really expressing her frustration and where she was and just how she was ready to leave, and take my kids and go a separate way. She asked me, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? It was just boom. It was like being kicked in the nuts and punched in the nose all at the same time, while having the wind knocked out of you, it was this very sobering moment.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy Petronic, the co-founder of the Whole Life Challenge, and welcome to episode 162 of the Breaking Ordinary podcast. This is a show about raising the bar, improving your life, transforming your health, fitness, and well-being, and shattering the status quo. My guests are people who have found the inner strength and confidence to lead from the front, to stand out, to be different, and to truly make a difference in the world of health, fitness, and well-being. Their stories will astound, inspire, and inform, and will help generate ideas that spring you into action. It is great to be back. I am in the middle of a 5-day water-only fast, which is quite an experiment. I didn't even know that I'd have the energy right now to record this. So I'm just glad I do. But it's not been easy. I've got friends that have told me that by the time you get to day 2 or day 3, you've done the hard part and you get this incredible burst of energy and mental clarity. So far, that's not happening for me. So I'm waiting for that to kick in. I'll be at 3 days at 8 o'clock tonight, which is like 6 hours from now. So it should be happening soon. Maybe day 4. But a lot of people have asked me why I'm doing this. And by the way, I do not recommend you do this. If you are, you definitely should talk. If you're going to try it, you should definitely talk to your medical professional about it to make sure your body is in the right condition to be able to do this. It was a right thing for me where I am in my life, given the amount of experience I have and the amount of time I have taken in doing, 25 years of exploration in health, fitness, and well-being and my body and nutrition and whatnot. So, there are 3 main reasons I'm doing this. The first is the most important for sure. I've always believed that I needed to eat 3 meals a day. I mean, why would I not believe that? I've been doing it since the time I was an infant, since the moment I was born. 3 meals a day, 5 meals a day, however many times a day. I have a habit of walking. I have these ingrained patterns in my home. When I walk down the stairs, I eat nuts. When I walk back up the stairs, I stop and get a drink out of the fridge. When I walk back downstairs, I open the fridge to see what kind of snack I can have. And I know logically that the human body does not need food for 30 to 40 days, maybe even more. But I have never had an experience of not eating food. And I wanted to experience it. I want to know what it feels like. I want to know that I can make it. I want to know what my energy levels feel like by day 4, by day 5. There's a difference between knowing it through a book or through knowledge and knowing it by knowing it inside. And I want to know it inside. So that's the first. And the mental toughness associated with doing it. The other 2 are more nutritional, body-based. The second is to give my pancreas a break from the constant need to secrete insulin in my body for, to regulate my blood sugar levels. And the last is to expose my body to something called cellular autophagy, which is a process by which cells break down damaged stuff inside of them. And they can only do that when they're not getting barraged from nutrients and the food that you put in your body every day. So those are my reasons for doing it. And so far I'm holding strong. And I want to get to our guest because he's awesome. His name is Dai Manuel. And I've known him in and out of the CrossFit world for probably 15 years. I've known about him. I've not known him, like had a personal connection or relationship with him, but he's a leader in the world of health and well-being. He's been a CrossFit Games athlete. He's quite a physical specimen, and he's a really awesome guy. Like you'll be able to tell immediately from when we start talking. Some of the things he's done, I mean, like, here's what he says in his bio. I'm a super dad, I'm dating my wife, and I'm currently doing life with my family around the globe. He's living in Bali with his family. He's got this really cool philosophy around education of his kids. He does it in like 4 dimensions. They go to a place, they go to a destination, and that becomes the teaching lesson for the moment. And he's also engaged in homeschooling and whatnot. But we talk a lot about that. We talk about his story and how he was morbidly obese and suicidal and how he turned himself around and turned his life around. We talk about his current habits and how he incorporates life vigorating, life fulfilling, life improving habits for himself in his day, every day. We talk about what some of those are. We talk about like some of the things he does when he coaches his clients, like aligning your values with your life, and exposing some of the dark corners that are cobwebbed over and full of dust and nobody's ever seen, and exposing them and bringing them out and why that's important. It's a really great conversation. I connected with him on many levels, and you'll learn a lot in this podcast. You'll learn a lot, whether it's by just listening how Dai conducts his life, or it's by some of the things and the topics that we talk about and make suggestions for in the podcast. And I've got a whole slew of episode notes you can check out when it's over or even before. You go to wholelifechallenge.com/podcast to see the episode notes. And what else? What else can I tell you about Dai? I think that's it. So let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Well, this is only the second time ever I've spoken with somebody live in Bali, and the first time was with you about a week ago. So,
I love it.
So yeah, this is good. That's a really interesting place to start. What the hell are you doing in Bali? I mean, you're a Canadian living in Bali. Like, that's not normal. Well, what's wrong with you?
It should be normal, though.
It should be. It sounds like it should be. Yes. Do it now before it's underwater, man. Right? Like, because it's global warming. And
but even just the weather, right? Like, it's California is one of our favorite places on the planet. But when we started traveling 3 years ago, we had made a commitment that we would go overseas eventually. But my father was quite ill, dealing with pancreatic cancer, and he passed, I guess it'd be about a year and a half ago now. So when he passed, we said, okay, well, you know what? We can go overseas now. You know, we felt that we just had that confidence that we could go overseas and just spend some time. And we tried Bali. You know, Bali's been on my dream board for a long time, and my vision board. It's always been this place that I wanted to go. My wife was here 20 years ago when she was backpacking around Australia.
Wait, pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
Do you have a vision, like a dream board? Do you make those things? Is that... Really?
Totally.
Yeah, you like clip magazines and put pictures up on it? And
dude, I'm a digital dude. So there you go. It's right there on my. I just shared my screen with you, and you can see it right there.
Oh, that is cool. A digital dream board.
Digital. So I just use PicMonkey.
That's cool.
Put it together.
I never really thought about doing a digital one. That is a really cool idea.
Yeah, like it's just there all the time on my screensaver, so I see it every day. And
I do everything else digitally. I don't know why that never occurred to me. I have this big resistance to dream boards, like cutting magazines and arts and crafts and scrapbooking. And
dude, that's not me at all.
Right, me neither.
I even use my notebook. I switched to Evernote years ago, and I still have pieces of paper around. But I write on paper, thinking I'm going to come back to this later. I never look at it ever.
Right.
So I'm all digital. But so that was something that's always been there. And so we got here, and dude, you get here, it is like a vacuum. You don't want to leave. It just holds you. It holds you. Culture and food and the climate and just obviously the cost of living. Relative to quality of life, it's an amazing proposition. And so we just sort of stayed the course. We've made it a home for the last year, and we just committed to stay here for one more year. And and we'll see. Maybe it'll be longer, maybe not. Like either way, we like to travel. This has been we haven't been in one place like this for a while, so it's just nice to have a home base. And I'll tell you, Bali makes a great home base for the interim, so we're good with that.
Have there been any particular challenges with the kids, especially that you didn't anticipate, or with you guys that you didn't anticipate?
Yeah, well, I mean, so, we started traveling and my kids would have been nearly, almost 10 and almost 12 at the time. And, they're now, 13 and 15. And so we've been going through these early teen years while traveling, not really having a fixed address for too long of a time. So you can imagine that creates a bit of, opportunity for some chaos.
Sure.
And, especially my 13-year-old, who's now 15, she really has had her moments where she struggled with not being with her friends, you know, and of course through digital means, like they talk on Messenger, they talk on direct messaging on Instagram, like almost daily. So she's maintaining that contact, but they really were hungry for more of a established routine. And so we got them back into schools just about 4 months ago. So they're back in schools here in Bali that tend to be schools that have a lot of expat kids and people from other parts of the world that are just looking to plug their kids into some sort of education system. And but we like it because it's one's more of an alternative learning type environment where it's more homeschooling type focused or even Montessori, but not Montessori. And my other daughter's following a Cambridge program, so more traditional maths, English, sciences, all that kind of stuff. But I have two different styles of kids. They like two different styles of learning, so it's nice to have that flexibility.
Were you guys homeschooling them up until you put them back in school?
Yeah. I will never claim to be a homeschooler. We had the aspirations, and no joke will lie, Andy, like within 3 weeks of being on the road, we're like, this is brutal. We're not doing this. So we switched gears pretty quick because the kids weren't having fun with it. We weren't having fun with it. And we're like, you know what? Life schooling, here we come, or road schooling, because we were on the road, and we just looked for opportunities to learn, to immerse ourselves in learning about the cultures, about the cities we travel to, going to museums. We went to a lot of national parks, so studying up on the national parks, and just we really tried to immerse ourselves in learning through life and experiences. And it worked really, really well. Like my kids are fantastic. Of course I'm biased, but I've heard that many times from other people, so I can stand behind it fully. They just are great kids. They're vivid learners, and now we're getting them back into more academics, and we found that they got back up to speed really quick. Like they are actually ahead in their writing and reading, because we just did a lot of that anyways. They're ahead of their classmates. And some of the maths and the sciences, just because they don't have some of the background, that's taken them a bit more work to get caught up. But yeah, they caught up on 3 years of schooling in the last 4 months. So it's been pretty awesome. We have a lot of friends at homeschool and traveling families that we've connected with that do practice more homeschooling and fixed curriculums. It just didn't work for my wife and I.
Right. It's funny. We took a trip to, the only word I can think of is Bali, but no, it's not Bali. It's Belize. We were in Belize.
Belize, beautiful. Yeah,
and we went down to see the Mayan ruins, and we spent an entire day. And I mean, it was a long day. It was like a 3-hour car ride to get to the ruins. But my son, like I get what you're talking about. My son's 11 years old, and he was just like a sponge. I mean, he was totally into it, totally in. I mean, I was totally into it too. Like I had never seen anything like it, and didn't know really anything about the Mayans. And it was really incredible. It was really cool. So I see how that could be a really cool way to just bring depth to your level of understanding of the world. Well, absolutely. And I mean, there's that great study. I mean, there's a number of studies that talk about learning, and learning in particular with retention of just information, and, just trying to remember statistics alone, or the typical way that we learn in school is just to memorize things, right? And then regurgitate. And that's just the process. But they found that, when you tie in experiences that actually have
an emotional connection, like a deep emotional connection, we tend to retain that information 22 times more than just trying to memorize information on its own. And so it's a really interesting study. So when you talk about, different ways of learning, it's nice to have something that's experiential, but also we connect with emotionally. And this is why, often people will pursue certain passions, especially academically, because they truly love it. They love the experience of it. They love every aspect of it. And that's why they're experts, and they just naturally seem like it was what they were meant to do.
Yeah, right.
And so it's fun to actually see that in kids, because you're right. Sponges, man. They just suck it all up, like they really do. And when they find something that they like, man, let them go. Just totally get at her, And so we try to get out of the way as much as we can. When they have something that they want to try, we let them try. If they like it, they like it. We support them. If they don't, well, hey, at least they tried it. Can't knock them for that.
Well, I wanted to have you on the podcast. I mean, certainly this is a great topic to talk about, but you've kind of set your life up where this is possible, and I think bringing everybody else on the podcast who doesn't know a little bit more about you up to speed on, who is Dai Manuel and how did you get to this place? Give us the Reader's Digest version.
Well, the Reader's Digest version. Back in my early teens, I was morbidly obese. I was very unhealthy, but all at my own doing. I was the one making those choices to eat the certain foods that I was eating, as well as I was making the choices not to move my body, and you do that for so long, there's a fairly negative compounding effect.
Well, and, can I ask you a question about it?
Yeah. Sure.
Did you have brothers and sisters, or were you only child?
One brother. A younger brother.
Did your parents just not kind of push you into athletic kind of stuff, or
they
was
tried
it
to support
cultural?
me, but I didn't really, my parents weren't athletes, okay, and they also weren't people that were regularly active, and so they did. Like, I tried a couple things. They tried to get me into things. I just really wasn't interested at the time, and my parents separated when I was younger, eventually divorced, and so my mom was left tending to my brother and I, while my dad was building his company still. He was still engaged, but we'd only see him every couple of weekends. Usually every 2 weekends we'd get to hang out for a night or two. And but even then, it was very, let's watch some movies. It was very passive a lot of the times what we were doing. And just my lifestyle was just what it was. And I gained a lot of weight.
What were you into?
Not much. Like video games. Like, seriously, it was like video games and eating junk food and just hanging out with friends, but never like really playing sport. We'd do certain things, like we'd play pickup hockey and other things, but
no music. You weren't like a violinist or nothing.
No, nothing, man. Like, honestly, I like to read and I like to write, so that was sort of something that I always did. But I didn't really come into my own until after I decided to make some lifestyle changes.
And what was your favorite video game?
I used to love Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. I think those are sort of the two I would always default to, and my brother was more into the role play type stuff. But it was just interesting, right? Like, I mean, so many of us, we find comfort in being able to externalize a lot of the things that hold us back in life, and right from an early age, it was always easier to blame everybody else for my situation. And just one day I got really honest. I broke down. I was thinking about suicide. And
how old were you when this?
I was almost 15 at the time. And it was pretty traumatic at the time, because I really thought I was going to kill myself. But ultimately, I'll just tell you right up, I was a coward. Thank goodness. I was scared of the idea of finality and just really doing that. And just as much as I thought about doing it, I was more scared to actually follow through with it than I was at the prospect of making some changes. And so I started making some changes, and this is where I was introduced to the idea of mentorship. And even back then I wouldn't have called it that. Knowing what I know now, I can call it was a mentorship type relationship, where I reached out and found people in our community that knew, well, at least from what I understood, they were experts in healthy living and fitness and nutrition, as well as I started going to the library. I tell my kids this all the time. Yeah, I went to the library and I got books out, and they're like, "What?
What's a library?"
Yeah, pretty much, right? They know what a library is, sort of, but not to the extent that we do. You know?
Right.
And I remember going and getting tons of books and just reading, right, trying to learn this stuff. And then I got into mountain biking. I got into doing more individual style sports, martial arts, and I've always done individual sports. I also got into rock climbing and hiking and just being active, living a life actively with daily movement.
And that was. Can we go back for a second before? Because I don't want. I mean, this is an important piece, because there's so many people out there struggling. Kind of the way you described that you were. How was there a moment that you knew you were either not going to, like, was it a light bulb went off, or?
Yeah, I actually, so if I go back, I was at my dad's for the weekend, and I don't remember what it was. We might've been going bowling, or we were doing something. We were about to go out, and, we'd have the one excursion on the weekend. And so we were getting set to leave, and I needed to have a quick shower. And I just remember being rushed. And normally if I was going to have a shower, especially at my dad's, I knew if I was in the shower for a long enough time and had the water hard enough, that the mirror would always fog over. And it was really, really interesting. It's very hard to find any photos of me back then. It's very difficult. Like I just really was very withdrawn. I avoided social situations, and just lack of confidence and a lot of self-loathing, to be honest. And I remember being rushed and having to get out of the shower fairly quickly without that mirror fogged over. And I remember turning and locking eyes with myself and then doing the up and down. I'd really not accepted where I was or what state I was in. And I just broke down, man. I just uncontrollably sobbing. And, I was just like, this just can't go on. If it's going to go on, I can't live life like this anymore, And after going through that dialogue internally, it just was like, enough's enough. I got to do something. I got to make some changes, and, it was just like this light bulb. Like you said, it just went on. And I was like, okay, enough's enough. I got to make some changes. And I expressed that to my dad. I remember him going out to buy, we went, and my mom said, okay, well, let's buy you a mountain bike. Cause I said, I'd like to start riding a bike. And I literally did that for a whole summer. Just went out on long, epic bike rides every day.
Wow.
Wasn't a fit guy. Wouldn't invite friends. I just go out on my bike for 3, 4, 5 hours and just go cycling around, and, did it for a whole summer. And then I educated myself on nutrition, and what sugar was doing to my body, and just all this stuff. And I just made some small tweaks. Like, really, it wasn't drastic. I mean, when you look back on it, I started moving my body, which I wasn't doing. And I started eating a little bit differently, looking for more nourishing foods versus going for a lot of the processed stuff that I was eating. And those two things compounded together with also a kid that was 14, almost 15, going into puberty. I was late into puberty just based on my lifestyle choices. And I kickstarted that. And that boosted testosterone, growth hormone, along with all the good lifestyle choices I was making. It's just like, I grew 12 inches. Wow. I also, I didn't change in my weight, but I lost basically the fat, and I put on a fair bit of muscle mass because I started doing weight training as well. And and I've never looked back since, but I had some people that were very helpful in that journey. I extended my hand looking for help, and there was people there on the other end willing to extend theirs back and pull me along and help me out. Because I remember the first day going to that gym, as a morbidly obese teen, like, dude, talk about the scariest place I could have gone on the planet.
Yeah. Right. Right.
It was just remember being so intimidated. I remember this guy, Randy, who managed the club, and just made me, he always used to wear remember the parachute pants and the little, you know what I'm talking about. Totally. MC Hammer lookalike. And,
yep. Tank top with parachute pants.
Dude, the little spaghetti straps.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah. So I just remember him and just making me feel so comfortable, making me laugh, just walking me through all the equipment and just introducing me to a couple people. He didn't have to do that, but he did,
right.
Right. And it was enough just to take that edge off and make me feel like I was welcome. Mm-hmm. And that journey lasted about 20 months for me to see that full transformation through, almost 2 years. But it forever changed my life. And that's where I got a taste for coaching others, because, a lot of people that were in my circle saw me make this transformation. They're just like, wow, how'd you do this? Can you help me? And they just started asking me questions about health and fitness and lifestyle. I'm 16, 17 years old, and I was just like, wow, this is fun. This is great. I can help other people do this. And then that's just what kickstarted me in the industry. I've been doing it ever since. And
since you were 16?
Yeah. Well, since 17 more so. I've been helping people with health and fitness, not professionally. Not until I got into my 20s, but it was just that spark, that I needed. Fortunately for me, I'm 6'1", and I've always been over 200 pounds. It's just I've changed that 200 pounds into muscle mass, and being fairly lean. I've been fortunate that way, because as bad as it was, I could not work out and eat, and I would gain the other weight. But when I train and I eat smart, I can put on muscle mass really easily. And that's just, I've been fortunate that way. You know, call me an endomorph, but that's just the way I am. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a blessing as well. But, you know, it's just like anybody. I'm sure, Andy, you've got stories where you saw a path, you know, and you made a concerted choice to, you know, whether you're at a V in a road, you know, that forks, as they call it, and you could have gone left versus right, but maybe you went right for a reason. Yep. Something told us to go that direction. And for me, that was it. It was like either death or make a change, or I'd have to accept who I was and just be all right with that. And that was nowhere on the radar, you know. Right. So it was really, to me, it was two choices. And so I went with the other and made some changes.
Sorry for the interruption, but I want to talk to you about something called the Happier Mind Journal. It's a journal that we came across, we meaning my staff and the Whole Life Challenge came across about 6 months ago. And we just thought it was one of the coolest laid out formats for establishing a daily journaling practice that we'd ever seen. It incorporates things like experiencing gratitude, writing down your goals, what you want to accomplish. It does it. It sounds perhaps daunting if you don't have a journaling practice now, but it doesn't give you much space to write these things down. So it's not meant to be verbose or long. And it has you look back over your day and asks you things like, what was your happiest moment? And what were your greatest accomplishments today? And so you get in the practice of writing things down that were meaningful to you, creating a memoir, creating a journal of notes about your life that could even be passed down to your kids and future generations if they so desire to read your personal memoirs. So if you've never checked out the Happier Mind Journal, go to happiermindjournal.com. And for podcast listeners only, you'll get a 20% discount by using the code WLC20 when you check out. WLC20. All right, let's get back to the show.
Did mountain biking and rock climbing and did that stuff stick? I mean, is that
yeah,
still...
I did, but then I got into martial arts and I dove all into that and boxing as well as kickboxing, and I loved that. I loved the workout, and it was great. And I did that. So my rock climbing sort of dwindled off. I was doing more sport climbing. I wasn't doing any more traditional long multi-pitch type stuff. So I found that actually too boring. I just didn't. I was doing it for the sport. I wasn't doing it to be outside on a ledge.
Big wall. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it wasn't my, being a guy that is intimidated a bit by heights, it just was never my thing. I was like, I can go up 30, 40 feet, no problem, but anything beyond that, I'm like, you guys are nuts.
I have a similar experience. I did a bunch of following, and there was one day I was maybe I should lead. Maybe I should try lead climbing. The minute I got above the highest, even if it was bolted, like the minute I got above the highest piece of protection, I went into complete kernel shock. Like Control Alt Delete, like the systems are shutting down. I can't move. My leg would start sewing machining. Like I just couldn't take another move. Like terrified, even though I'm only like a foot above the last piece of protection.
Totally.
So it's very weird. So I became the epitome of a top roped or a follower. I could follow up, a lot of stuff, but
totally. And I can relate to that in a big way. And it just changed. And but then, like some of us learned about a sport called CrossFit. Mm-hmm. When Patty, Craig Patterson, a friend of mine out of Vancouver. I remember when he was opening up their first space. He bought some equipment off me. I got into the equipment industry. I was a personal trainer. Got into selling equipment, and I remember helping him set up and him saying, "Come on down, come try it out." And I kept putting it off, thinking, because I was a gym junkie, right? I was like global fitness all the way. I mean, that's who my main customer base was anyways. And just, that's where I was. And I thought, I know fitness. I'm good. And eventually went in and I tried CrossFit. And this is almost 12 years ago now. And I got spanked, man. I just absolutely.
We all did. Spanked. I mean, come on. We all did. It's like, that's universal.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Yeah. Like just beyond crazy. You know, even with all the martial arts training and everything else I'd been doing, I just was blown away, you know?
Yeah.
And, I was like, I got to come back. And so I just kept coming back.
This just isn't okay. This is not okay to get spanked that bad. So I'm coming back.
And I still get spanked. I keep getting spanked. Every time I go back, I get spanked. Yeah. But I love that idea of the constant variation, and just this idea of continuous progression, because I've been someone that's been on that path for a long time. You know, personal development, professional development, I just eat that stuff up. I'm all about how can I be a little bit better today? You know, how can I deal with that problem a little bit more creatively? You know, it gets me excited, and I found CrossFit fit that mold for me. And so that's sort of, you know, the fitness and health journey, but obviously business has gone different places. I was in traditional retail for 17 years, but I started building a personal brand online 11 years ago with a personal blog and social profiles, doing social sharing. And I just did it because I loved connecting with people, and I liked sharing information and coaching and training people. But in my current job, I couldn't do much of that outside of that scope. You know, like I was working really in this sales environment, and it was great. It was successful. I enjoyed it, but I just lost the passion for it. You know, I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life. And I think probably most people who listen to this, they've probably heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, and most of us have. I read his first book, Crush It, when it was like in the first printing, you know, and that sort of changed my whole perspective on marketing. And because I was very interested in how he went from, you know, a retail location to really this online conglomerate, like just this massive company. And so I really just started to implement some of the things he was teaching, and I was like, wow, this stuff works. It works great. And I'm really enjoying connecting with people, you know, creating these relationships. And it just gave me options. So 3 years ago, when my book was published, my wife and I, we looked at each other and said, you know what? Now's the time to make some shifts. We got enough coming in this secondary income that even if we left the other one all entirely, we could, you know, if you get really honest with it versus what you need versus what you want, right? Like, and what we needed, like we downsized our lifestyle tremendously. You know, we went down to one vehicle, got rid of our overhead with our rents and all the extra costs that come with living downtown Vancouver. And we just looked at how could we travel and be a full-time family, yet do it so we're not, we could do it based on the amount of income we had coming in through what I was doing online. And you'd be surprised when you really get honest about what do you need to make that dream a reality. You find that it often costs a lot less than what most people will think. You know?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the difference between what you need and what you want. You know, like, it's amazing what, like, if I opened up my closet today and I was really honest about what I need in my closet, there'd be very few things that would survive. I mean, there's like, I can live off of probably 7 or 8 t-shirts and a few long sleeve shirts and a few pairs of jeans and, you know, not much else. Shorts. I got some shorts I got to wear because otherwise I'd sweat to death in the summertime. Yeah. But, you know, like, do I need all that stuff? No, I don't need all that stuff. So, I mean, I think you're right. I think you kind of accumulate things over the course of your life.
We really do. You know, I gave away 4 bags of CrossFit t-shirts. 4 bags.
I had a quilt made. So like when I sold the gym, one of my trainers was like, my aunt would love a sewing project. She's like, she'd love to make you a quilt out of all your t-shirts. It's a massive, awesome. I didn't realize she was going to use all of them that I gave her. Like I thought she used
everyone.
She used every single t-shirt. I thought she'd like pick like maybe 8 or 10, you know, it's massive. It's this massive quilt. So it's cool. But it's very cool. Yeah. It's very cool.
That is very cool. And yeah. So, you know, that prospect of making that change, because it's funny, I coach and I work and mentor people in this sort of transition. And I find there's a lot of us in sort of our generation that are looking for options, you know, because this idea of working one career for our life, it might have worked for our parents, but, you know, being at the age that I am now, you know, I'm in my early 40s and I just, even in my late 30s, so like 5 years ago, I just started questioning things a little bit differently. I was like, man, I'm working so hard and yet I don't really feel like I'm moving forward. You know, it's just like these wheels are spinning and I'm having less and less time with my family. And because I'm trying to accumulate wealth, I'm trying to accumulate more stuff. I was just like, you know, this just doesn't feel right. Yep. And so I wanted to, you know, my wife and I, we said, listen, let's try to figure out what do we want our lifestyle to look like? What are some of our values, you know, that are true values? You know, like if I ask you, what are your pillars in your life, Andy? I know you can probably rattle them off very quickly. But if I ask you this question another 10, 15, 20 years from now, you probably give me the same answer if I say again, hey, what are your pillars? What are your values? You know, right. When you hear these things.
I think about that stuff a lot. Like that's not a little question for me. And I try to live my life according to them, but I haven't taken the step that you have, which is actually changing my life based on like radically going, what trajectory do I want my life to be on? I'm a little I'm a little less flexible in that my wife is very much ingrained in the Hollywood celebrity business in the world, so I can't really leave here. But it is something that I spend a lot of time kind of making sure I'm feeling like I'm aligned with what I value most in life.
I love how you said that, this idea of alignment. And it's not an easy question. And, for anybody that's listening to this, these are big questions. But these are often the big questions that we avoid asking ourselves because sometimes we're scared about the possible answers. We're scared that we're going to identify these dark corners or recesses in our homes, our mental homes, especially our spiritual homes or emotional homes that we fabricate for ourselves in our lifetime through our experiences. Yet we have these little corners that have become very dark. They're dimly lit. And in these dark corners of our room, rather than actually shining a light on some of this, the stuff that's there, that's accumulated, that's collected, we buy ourselves a nice little plant. And we stick the plant in the corner, right? Thinking, okay, well, this will mask the issue, so I don't have to look at this. I don't have to acknowledge it. Look, I can look in that corner every once in a while. Now I see a nice plant. We mask things. And we do this very, very well.
Well, what's interesting is we actually lie. I mean, we're lying about it. I mean, in a way, we're like lies of omission, and lying to ourselves about what's really true, and that doesn't ever get us anywhere. I mean, it does in the moment. It seems like it does. Yeah. Like you said, the plant looks a lot nicer than the hole that's behind it. But without actually dealing with the hole, it buys you a little bit of time, but what good does that do? It doesn't do much.
Well, you wake up one day and you realize, okay, all these moments, these opportunities that I thought I had in my life, you wake up one day and you realize they're all just yesterday's now, right? So it's this, we have this idea of, I remember hearing someone once say, or maybe I read it, and they were talking about if you're someone that's constantly saying, I'm going to do this first, then I'll get to that, if things are just right here, if I get just enough money in my bank account, then I'm going to go do this. Or if I'm just a little, remember in CrossFit, I used to have friends, when I get a little bit more fit, then I'll go to CrossFit. It was just this idea, I got to be a little fitter before I start on this path.
Totally.
It does, right? But we use these conditions in our life all the time in lots of different ways. And once you start to really explore that and ask yourself, why am I saying these things? Why am I living a certain way? You start to realize that you can collect a lot of these tomorrows, tomorrow. You find yourself saying this all the time. What does that really mean? Because one day you wake up and 10 years has passed and you're like, well, all these tomorrows are 10 years of yesterdays now, right? It's just unrealized opportunity and potential and really doing things that were more in alignment with you. And it's a process like many things, but it's a process I do encourage people to embark on or at least adopt into their life, even if it's only once a quarter or once or twice a year, where you just really sit down and, this idea of goal setting and all that, that's fine. But I'm talking about life setting here, this is way bigger than just a goal. This is your life, man. Yep. This is your life. And it deserves the attention that you give to other things that you're passionate about in life. I want you to get passionate about life the way you do get passionate maybe about going to the car show once a year. Dude, this is your life. You got one of these things, man. Let's make sure we optimize it and maximize it. So, when you're there on your deathbed and you're looking back, it's not a matter of any regrets. It's just man, I'm ready. Peace out.
Yeah, totally. It brings you power. It brings, the parts that really make your life real, your experience as a 15-year-old boy looking in the mirror and breaking down. On one hand, I think people a lot of times go through their life hiding that stuff. Yeah. Those are the deep, dark corners that they don't want to bring out. But when it comes down to it, those are the moments, those are the things that actually bring you incredible power into your life and enable you to
if you've dealt with them, if you've actually shined light on them and brought light to them, they enable you to take action that many other people don't have the strength to take, simply because they haven't dealt with their dark places and their dark issues in their life.
That's right. Yeah, you're bang on, and it's interesting, right? Because we do fabricate a lot of beliefs around certain things, and I say fabricate because I often will explore some of my beliefs, and I'm like, I don't even know why I believe that. Like, I really don't know. Like, what was that decision based on? Did I actually read something? Did I hear something? Like, and we start to look at the ways that we actually gather knowledge, right? Today we're in a digital age where we have access to so much information, and taking that from knowledge to wisdom, that's where the personal experience bridge comes into play. And I think we take so many things as face value without really exploring it and asking ourselves, well, how does this apply to my life? How does this show up? How does this show up in my life?
So I got a question for you. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a process that you follow? Do you have a daily ritual that you engage in? Like, how do you do it for Dai Manuel?
Well, my wife and I, we've gotten really good at supporting each other on this path, and we, obviously communication can always be better. We've been together now 18 years, so it gets, we can be the best of friends. We can also really get under each other's skin if we want to, and that's that level of comfort. But we've created an opportunity for one another where every 3 months we get to go away for a couple nights on our own, and during this time we'll often, read or write or just take time to meditate, just chill, like literally unplug ourselves from the reality that we've created for ourselves. And I don't mean this in a drug-induced haze. I'm talking just like literally.
No ayahuasca. No, none of that stuff.
No, not yet anyways. But it's quite popular here in Bali. There's certain circles. But, it's really just to take ourselves out of our everyday situation, our everyday life, to now be able to reflect on that and just spend some actual time asking yourself a few questions. And the one question I love to ask people, and this is the question that drives them nuts: what do you want? What do you want? And people are like, what do you mean, what do I want? Like, no one asks me ever what I want.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's the problem. You got to ask yourself what you want. And then you got to explore, what is that? And we just are so, like, I have people that are like, well, you mean like what I want to watch on Netflix tonight? Or you mean what I want for dinner? Like, they're just thinking about the immediate, like right now. And that's great. But what do you want for life? What do you want for you? What do you want for your happiness? Really starting to drill down to that and asking yourself, okay, well, this is what I think I want, but why do I really want this? And what will happen once I have that? And that's where, you start thinking about future pacing, and we start thinking, okay, well, a year now I've got that. How's my life going to change? Will it change? And when you start realizing that some of the things that we want won't really affect our life or make any changes. I mean, I think it was Guy Ritchie did an interview with Matt Damon, and it was like right after he'd won, for Good Will Hunting, they won the Academy Awards, right? And I think it was like after all the hoopla had settled and Matt Damon got home that evening, he was saying that, he was very grateful that he won it so early on in his career, because it freed up the space to now realize that it was just about the creativity. It was about it took all the pressure off. Because when he realized he's got home, he was all by himself. He had this nice trophy, but life didn't change. Nothing really changed. He was still the same guy. So but we put a lot of value in some of these big aspirational goals that we set for ourselves, and really understanding that it's great. It's a milestone, but does it really, in the whole scope of your life, is it going to change it that much? And it may, but I don't think it really changes us at the core. We're still the same people. I like to think so anyways. My core beliefs, I don't feel are going to change if I win a big award. I get recognized for something cool that I do. It's nice. I'm not saying that's not nice.
Well, I think the more aligned you are with who you are on the inside, the more likely it is that won't change you. But I think the more I don't know. The more you have not spent time asking yourself those questions, the more you're bebopping around from event to event to event to event, right. And you're at the effect of the things that are happening to you in your life, the more likely those things will change you. And even though your life is still the same, it might not be. But
that's right.
But who you are on the inside is the same. But the trick is to connect.
Yes. It's very well put. And you asked me about my ritual, and yeah, I've got certain things I like to do every day, and that includes mindful meditation, potentially some journaling. But for me, journaling is a little different. I tend to just open up a note and type out a few things and how I'm feeling and whatnot. I do a personal check-in every day, sometimes a number of times a day, like how am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? What can I do to shift my mood if I want to shift my mood?
Is that like in a breath, kind of like a short quick meditation thing, like 10 seconds?
Sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's really just a quick check-in. Like it's just, very purposeful breaths, really focus on slowing down the exhale specifically, I take a nice deep inhale, but then be really mindful and slow the pace on the exhale. It's where we really get that parasympathetic response, that lessening of the heart rate, that calming effect. And I've learned to really appreciate that because it's just such a simple thing that we can do to switch our moods at times, right? And hey,
my son just walked in the door.
That's awesome. Hello.
Hi.
Say hi. That's Dai.
Hi, Dai.
Hi. What's your name?
Tell him your name.
Dashel. I'm Dashel.
Dashel. Nice to meet you.
You too.
You know where he is?
Where?
He's in Bali. Do you know
Where's
where?
that?
It's in Indonesia.
Oh.
You know where that is?
Near Australia.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of cool? We're sitting here talking to him on a video.
My kids are still in bed. I have a 13 and 15-year-old daughters.
They're still in bed, he said.
Oh.
My kids. It's early morning here.
Ooh, that's cool.
All right, we're in the middle of a podcast.
Oh.
You need one of the red signs that say on air.
I thought about getting one of those. A lot of times I'll say, hey, no, don't come in right now. But, we're having such an engaging, fun conversation. And you have kids, so I figured it would be okay.
About, man. What life's about. You take those moments.
Totally.
It's
he just got me. I got to show you this because he was pointing to it. Hang on one second.
Cool.
My birthday was last week, and I've been doing this training with this group called Warrior, and he's like,
cool.
he's like, let's get dad a Warrior helmet. And so my wife went online and started shopping because she's kind of an expert at that. And, and look at that.
Oh, dude. That is so badass.
Is that awesome?
Down a lot in that yet, or what?
I mean, I can't. It doesn't fit on my head. So what? Wow. This is an audio only. So I got to describe what it is. It's this Spartan Warrior helmet. It looks like something out of the movie 300. Dude,
it looks totally out of 300.
Yeah, it's bronze. It fits on my son's head perfectly. So he could actually wear it. But it's totally cool.
That is amazing. I love that. Still one of my favorite costumes was a number of years ago for Halloween was going out as like a 300 warrior, and I freaking love that. You getting dressed up like that, man. I don't care if you're wearing that little robe; it looks pretty badass.
The robe, or even if you're wearing the fake abs, like the ones that make you look like you have a 12-pack. You do have a 12-pack, but like a lot of people don't, and so that's kind of cool too.
Well, it's fun to just make believe every once in a while.
Okay, you're probably far enough along in the episode to think of something you got that was of value. If that's true, do me a favor, forward the episode to a friend, post something about it in social media, take a snapshot of you listening to the episode and post it up on Instagram or on Facebook. Tell me. Send me an email at podcast@wholelifechallenge.com. I'd love to get your feedback. If you have a guest that you think would be an awesome guest that is in alignment with the show, send me an email at podcast@wholelifechallenge.com, and maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to get them on the show. But if you're willing to, the best way to support the podcast, one of the best ways to support the podcast, is to write a review on iTunes. And I've made it pretty simple for you. You can use a bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/breaking ordinary. And if you do that, it will take you right to iTunes and give you an opportunity to write a review. And that's one of the best ways to get the podcast on the map so other people find it. Because I'm on a mission to change people's lives this year. And the only way I can do that is to get the podcast out in front of more people. All right. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to the show.
I've done like those kinds of breathing timeouts before, and it's amazing how 30 seconds to a minute of just taking deep breaths. Like if you just said, okay, I'm going to take 5 deep breaths, close your eyes and take 5 deep breaths. It's amazing the impact that has. I was very resistant to doing it when I first started playing around with it. I'm like, what good is 5 breaths going to do? Really?
Yeah, right.
Like, come on. And it really does. It's amazing.
It's pretty wild. And, it's like anything. I think a lot of us have tools that we either have access to, that most of them are free, like taking time out just to stretch even, like just stretch, right? Like I like Mobility Wad. I like ROM Wad. Like I love these little timeouts to do some stretching and have someone guide me through it. And there's free apps all over the place that like Headspace, like our Insight Timer is the one I tend to use the most. And it's just a meditation app, it's like, dude, it's free. Just grab it. Like even I talk to people all the time about just understanding heart rate variability even, like just grab yourself a free app. You can test your heart rate variability, establish a baseline, and then you've now got a great self-diagnostic tool to tell you if you're in a heightened state of stress, like internally. Because that's going to then dictate how you treat yourself, from a self-care perspective. Most people just don't know where they're at. We don't have the little fancy dashboard like our cars have today that say, oh, hey, you got to go change this, or hey, you got to refill this. Like we don't have that, but we do. But you just have to take the time to actually use a couple of these tools to say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Here's something I can do to shift this mood. But it's a choice, and you got to follow through with an action, like anything in life. My goodness, it's just not going to be handed to you on a plate, but pretty close to it. Pretty close to it.
How do you? Where do you put these things in your day? Like, do you put them in first thing in the morning? Do you do them before you go to bed? Do you how do you make sure you get them in?
And I think that's the best answer I can give you is I just make sure to get them in.
Oh,
and so what I mean by that is I do recognize that I have certain times of the day where I'm more productive doing certain types of things. So for me, a lot of the creative stuff I do or any coaching calls, it's done in the morning, like early morning. Like I'm like a 4:30 a.m. riser, just been doing it since I was 18, getting up at 5 a.m., so it's just become so ingrained. But that first few hours in the morning, I love doing creative things with, whether it be just writing an article, whether it be doing some like podcasting, whatever. It's my creative time. And then I just make sure that I also block time for self-care every day. Like every day my workout gets blocked into my calendar. And it's not always at the same time, but it's always there. And my family knows that 2-hour window I've blocked off for self-care, whether maybe I'm going to get a massage, maybe I'm just going to go for a hike, maybe I'm going to go to the gym and crush a wad, right? It doesn't matter, but I got a 2-hour blocked off every single day for me to take me time. And my wife does the same. We encourage our kids to have their own fixed time every day where they can do whatever they want for themselves, at least from a personal development and nourishment standpoint. And we just find that that's just a good use of our time. Because it makes us much more, it makes us be the best version to one another when we are together, right? Like if you can't look after yourself, who's going to look after you? It's just, you got to take it. You got to own it. And,
it's not selfish. I think that's one of the things I think it's one of the things people have to kind of get over. It's like, it's the cliche thing, put the oxygen mask over your mouth and nose before your kids. You're doing them no service if you're not serviceable.
Yes.
And many of us go through life not serviceable. We tell our kids, we preach to our kids, but we don't do it. And
right.
I think doing it is. Do you have a particular time of the day that you like to set aside your 2 hours? Like,
well, for me, it's either right before lunch or right after lunch. And so it's like sometimes I'll do a couple classes in the morning. So that might be like 10 to noon. And then I'll come back in the afternoon. If the kids are in school, then I've got a couple more hours where I can do things for me, or like business related. And, or I'll do it early afternoon before they're out of school. I try to do a lot of this personal stuff, more midday when they're not around. And then when they're back around, then we do a lot more family stuff, and, so we've been like, and I want people to understand, like when I made this transition to be more nomadic and working online versus in a traditional brick and mortar, it's not that I don't work. I just work differently now. It's as they say, a hustle. I don't like to think I'm hustling. I like to think I'm just being more strategic with how I'm using time. But I still work. I still work a lot of hours every week, but it's just a different way of working. And yeah, I can be location independent. It's nice. So it gives me that opportunity to be around my family a lot more. But it still involves a lot of work. It's not like I have this massive savings. I'm far from it. I made some decisions when I left that career that I also gave up a lot, and released a lot of things that could have provided me a lot of comfort, financially. But it didn't feel right anymore. And I was okay with that. I was okay with making those shifts. And but at the end of the day, as Tim Ferriss says, you can do some fear setting. And when we thought about what's the worst that could happen, it's like, man, I go back and I get a job too. Like, just I'm more like, do you know what I mean? Right, I go and I work for somebody else. I don't work for myself. Like, I'm very employable. Like that's really the worst that could happen. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And why put it off? And I think it's an exercise that we can also take, being mindful, asking yourself, hey, what do I want? What's important to me? Why is it important to me? And really getting clear on that is great. But then also asking ourselves because when that comes up and you go through that questioning, you naturally are going to get certain fears coming up. You're going to get certain concerns because you're going to all of a sudden realize, oh, for me to truly go after what this is and truly answer this question of what I want and get what I want, I'm going to have to make some changes. I have to do things differently than I'm doing them now. And change is scary a lot of the times. And so going through that process of saying, okay, well, I'm having these fears right now. Are these realistic fears? Is there merit to these fears? Or really, what's the worst that can happen? And play that out. Just play it out in your mind. Like, just ask yourself and be honest. Like, what is the worst that can happen if I make this change?
Are those some of the things that you journal about when you write? Like that you open up an Evernote and write
sometimes. And also, I'm very active in Toastmasters. And Toastmasters, I highly recommend it to anybody that's looking to be just more effective with how they communicate, and get a little bit more creative with presenting in front of an audience even, or telling a story. They're all over the world. They're nonprofit, so they cost like very little to participate. But it's helped me a lot over the last 10 years because it's given me an outlet, a place to express some of these ideas, some of these things that are going on in my own head, to an audience. And when you teach something to somebody, you internalize it at a much different level.
100%. Yep.
And that's something that I enjoy. So I look at these opportunities to speak in front of these audiences. And now I do it on a bigger scale. I speak professionally as well now. And I love this because I can then share some of these processes that I go through, but share it in a different way and communicate how it's made me feel, how it's affected my life, and then invite other people to try it. Just try it. Like, gosh, like what's the worst that can happen? Right? Like, yeah, it might work for you. You might see your life change. Oh, it might not work for you. Oh, well, you're still doing the same thing anyway. So what's the matter? Right. What's the big deal? But there's always that chance that it will make a change. And isn't that worth it? At least, well, to me, it was a unanimous, like, hell yeah. So we made those shifts.
Well, one of the things that just popped into my head when you were talking was, for anything that you really want in your life, you've got to be willing to fail and fail badly. Like if you really want it, it's got to be okay, because most people don't start where you are. Like if you wanted to become a coach or you wanted to become a speaker, you didn't start where you are today. You just said you've been in Toastmasters for 10 years. 10 years. Yeah. That's 10. I imagine, is this something you go to every week or every 2 weeks or
almost weekly? Like, I've had some breaks over the last 10 years, just based on travels. But overall, almost every week for 10 years.
Yeah. That's some serious training. It's like people that walk into a CrossFit gym and like, yep, I want to go to the CrossFit Games next year, and compete in, in Carson. Like what?
Yeah.
Like, they used to happen a lot back in the early days of, 2010, 2011, 2012.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen like that anymore, man. Even you get these guys coming over from different sports, sure, they got the skill sets, but it takes a long time to develop that technique and develop that breadth of just efficiency. My goodness. It's a lot of dedication. It really is. And Gladwell talked about the tipping point and this idea of mastery, right? And when I look at it, it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of experience that we have to put into this stuff. So it's crazy. But again, going back to that, it's just this idea of understanding how to communicate a message and share a story. And through that process of sharing stories and sharing some of these insights that I discover, I prefer that than just writing it down into like an Evernote. or I'll write an article, a blog article on it, or I'll do a Facebook Live.
So you do it publicly instead of just privately on your own.
I do.
Yeah,
I do. I just find that it sticks with me much more. And I made a commitment a long time ago that I was going to try to be the best role model I could, not only for my kids, but for my communities. And the best way I can do that is I'm not here to tell people what to do, but I want to show them what I'm doing, show them what my family's doing. And we use social media as a tool to show rather than to tell. And I have a filter where it's like, I want to educate, I want to inspire, I want to motivate, and try to do it in a fun way. And because I got this clarity around what it is I'm doing with these tools, it's allowed me to be very efficient with what I'm sharing and what I'm putting out there. But I'm doing it in the hopes that it impacts somebody positively. At the end of every day, I ask myself, what I did today, do you think it moved somebody forward in life? And if I can honestly say yes, then I feel like I had a good day, and that's sort of been my mission the last 20 years. It's just to positively impact people to live the best life possible now. And
I love the dual purpose of that stuff, because I think it's important not to miss that. Like you're on one hand, you're trying to help people live their best life and to find did it help move somebody else forward? But in another way, there's a selfish piece of that, which is what helps Dai move forward and what helps Dai be a better father and a better husband, and what helps our family. And you've found the way that works best for you just by experimentation and trial and error. And I mean, you've been at it for a long time, and you were willing to go through that process of kind of figuring it out.
And to be fair too, and just so people know, there's been some moments where I've had some pretty big F ups, and
tell me about one. Tell us about one.
Well, I haven't had a drink for 10 years, and that should hopefully tell you something. That's by choice. And I used to abuse alcohol as well as narcotics. And, it was, remember I talked about this idea of masking some of those corners. Yeah. And for me, masking some of the discontent and some of the sadness or frustrations in my life, the Band-Aid approach was with alcohol and drugs. That was it. I go out with the boys. I disrespect my family. I disrespect myself. I was living like a double life, to be honest. On one hand, I'm this fitness professional that's well known in his space and really trying to help people, help them live their best lives. And meanwhile, on the other one, I was like self-sabotaging my own. And so it was just crazy living in this dichotomy, of just complete opposite sides of the fence, and just struggling internally with that. And it wasn't until my wife asked me a question one day, and this was the question. And anybody that's a parent, you're going to want to put this question down. You're going to want to write it down. You want to ingrain it on your head, in your head.
I've got my pen. I'm going to write it down right now.
Okay, and here it is. This is the question she asked me. She sat me down. Now, this is after an all-night bender. I was out. I woken up literally on the floor the next morning, and I could hear her down in the kitchen. I could hear the dishes rattling, so she was doing something in the kitchen, and my kids were on the couch watching Dora the Explorer. Just like most little girls, they love that show. I hate it, but I still remember them. Dora. Anyways, I remember coming downstairs, and it felt like I had this stake through my one temple and out the other. Just this massive pounding headache, dehydrated, just not feeling my best at all, and I could see in my wife's eyes that something was different today. Listen, I'm your typical guy, and I'm very good at saying, I'm sorry, babe, that won't happen again. Just the whole thing. Oh, I'll never do that again. I just would always ask for forgiveness rather than ask for permission all the time. Mm-hmm. And I abused that for a lot of our early years in our relationship. And fortunately for me, she stuck it out, and she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And, she sat me down that day, and I could tell that this was serious. This one was not going to be brushed under the carpet. She sat me down, and she looked me in the eyes. And after a little bit of dialogue, really expressing her frustration and where she was and just how she was ready to leave, and take my kids and go a separate way. She asked me, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? It was just boom. It was like being kicked in the nuts and punched in the nose all at the same time, while having the wind knocked out of you, like it just like, it was this very sobering moment, pardon the pun, but it was where I was just like, I'm not. I would absolutely dread the day that my girls would marry somebody like me. Dude, it was just at that moment, like everything just changed. Like it literally changed. And, and I say this to people I coach all the time, like, you want to make a change? Great. Go make a change. It's like, choose a different path. Just do it. Like, what's your problem? You talk about all this crap holding you back. I'm like, just choose to do something differently and do it differently. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I had every excuse in the book, but then at that time I was just like, shit, I'm just going to do something differently. I'm going to do it completely differently.
But it was connected to a very deep why. Like I think that is maybe some of the reasons why people just don't go out and do something differently, because it's not as connected to that root. Right. I mean, that just hit you in the stomach and the heart and the brain and everywhere. The face and everywhere at once,
Everywhere.
I mean, I hear that too when I hear people talking about Navy SEAL training, and some of the hardest things there are to get through in life is when if you don't have a connection to the why you're doing this, that you just when shit gets hard, and it will get hard, and you will feel like quitting, like you've got to know.
Yeah, you're right. And it was that moment. And now I sought outside help. I got some counseling. I actively started going to certain groups and meetings and just trying to get really right with me. I spent a lot of time focusing on me. But I was very fortunate that my wife was there to support me through this process. And I'm forever grateful that she was there in my corner. And some of my closest friends were also there. But I also had the hard realization, and this is something as it relates to change, just to sort of tie this all up with a nice bow, change is intimidating. And you'll find that as you start to change, as you start to evolve into this person that you want to be, and I think everybody, as you answer this question, like, what do you want? And you start to get really honest with that, that's going to mean you morphing into something more than you are now. It's awesome to be able to foreshadow that and to see it. But you're going to realize there's people in your life right now that you may want to be part of that vision, but ultimately they won't be. And you sometimes may try to change those people to fit the vision, but you have to realize that rarely ever works. Rarely. And so you have to be prepared that if you can't change the people around you, you're going to change the people around you, and you're going to change your association. You're going to change the communities that you plug into. And it's part of that process. And it's hard because some of that people that you're changing may be family. It just may be family. And that's hard. It's really hard, but you have to recognize what's important to you. What is it that you want? Not to be mean about this. Like, you can try to support them. You can try to be there and be unconditionally loving, but there comes a point where it just may not align, and they're actually holding you back because they don't want you to move forward out of fear of losing you. And what they, in essence, they're doing is actually pushing you away. Right. The more they're trying to hold you back in life. Weird thing, this thing called life and relationships and all this stuff. And
they also know a version of you that is stuck in your past. It's held you kind of captive. Like your buddies that you went drinking with knew that version of you, and they're not committed to doing anything differently. They didn't have that realization when they walked down the stairs. Right. They weren't there. Yeah. And so, whether you want to or not, if you're a different person, they're still committed to the guy that you were. And that's not going to serve you moving forward.
So true. No, you're right. And it's, for those that listen to this, I love hearing other people's stories as it relates to these sort of transformational moments. And they're moments, right? Like, I think a lot of us wait our entire lives for these moments. And some of us just wake up the next day and you realize, oops, I missed it, And I think it's just becoming mindful, of when these moments actually appear, and then being mindful enough to make a decision, and a decision that you can sit back and say, I made the best decision based on what I knew at the time and who I was. And if you can honestly say that, then gosh, you're living a great life and you're doing things on your terms. And
Well, I think it's important to, I think another thing that I just want to kind of expand on what you said is are you paying attention? Are you listening? And I think a lot of times we're so inundated with noise from life and from the television and from the media and from all the companies that make a lot of money on keeping our attention that we don't.
That's right.
We're not listening. We have an inner voice, but we're not paying attention to what the inner voice says. And, we go through our lives distracted. And that's for me, that was really one of the things that connected me to meditation. That, I was, for a long time I did meditation because I was supposed to. Like I had a Zen teacher and this is the way Zen Buddhists do it. And this is how you're supposed to get enlightenment. And so I would go and sit at 5 o'clock in the morning with my other Zen people. Yes. And I always had trouble replicating that on my own in my house. And I would do it for a little bit and then I would quit. And then I would say, okay, well, just do like Tim Ferriss says, just start with 1 minute. And I'd start with 1 minute and then I'd go for 2 minutes and then I'd go for 2.5 minutes. And then the next day I would not do it. And, and it wasn't until I made this connection to well, shit, it's my why. Like, why do I meditate? I didn't have a strong enough why. And my why became, I want to hear that voice. I want to separate enough from the noise that's out in my life that I can, not that I have these aha moments every time I meditate. Don't get that idea. I'm not like enlightened that way. But it's the pattern of practicing allowing myself that space between life and between, like a peacefulness that I love now. I mean, like this year I've had streaks. My app keeps track of the streaks of days in a row that I've done. Like I use an app called Oak. And I think right now I'm on day like 47, and which is just a miracle. It's a miracle for me because my longest streak literally beginning of this year had been like 10 days. So like, and I had another streak earlier that I'm almost up to. I think it's at like 56. So I'm gunning for that 56-day record.
It's huge. It's so good.
Cool. It's really cool. But I have a why. I have a purpose behind it now that's much bigger than you do it because that's the way everybody else does it.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because, I coach a lot of people and you hear the 3 Ps, and when I say that, people often have certain ideas of what that means, but I think it's passion, purpose, and process. Right. It's the process piece that we often forget. Everyone knows that I'm passion and purpose. This is great. I got this really dialed in, but without a process, it's really hard to sustain, the passion and the purpose because those are very emotional and they will detract us or take us other directions at times. It's like that, we just get distracted. Let's be honest. We get distracted in life. But if you set up a process, create a system that you can adhere to and at least follow through on, make these little micro commitments and then stick to them like what you're doing right now, 56 days, 47 days, like you've set up a process, through which you can do the check and balance. And your passion and also this purpose are really emotionally connected with it, which is great. So it's just that little extra piece. And that's where, it's nice to have a process that you can plug into, at least as you're exploring this way of living life a little bit differently, doing things a little bit differently. Like I did, like yourself, I struggle with meditation and I know the value of it, but I wasn't consistent. And I did a Vipassana 10-day silent meditation in Thailand, like just a few months ago. And it was a complete mind warp, dude, no talking, no physical contact, no exercise, no writing, no nothing except for sitting on a pillow from 4:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. It was crazy.
Was there pain? Did you have pain in your body going through that?
Absolutely. First couple of days, no. Like I work my mobility a lot. I'm in my 40s now. It's like, this is important. I want to be functional, functionally fit. But no, it was pains were manifesting in parts of my body that shouldn't even be associated with pains considering fitting. It was ridiculous. Like I had stuff coming up, and it was all attached to certain memories that were coming up and certain emotions that I had attached to certain beliefs. And it was it was messing me up pretty good. Right. And it took me a while to unpack that. And I'm still unpacking some of the stuff that came up for me at that time. I had memories come back from me in my childhood and even former relationships with people that I don't even know where that was. It was like that dark corner in the room. Yeah, right. It was like a big freaking spotlight was on it now, and I had nothing. But that's all I could look at. It was like tunnel vision. I'm staring at this corner now. I'm going into it. I'm going into this little cubby, and I'm going to dig all that crap out. And as you're going through all that, it's like, holy crap. There's a lot of shit here. There's a lot of stuff to unpack here. And it's a great exercise. You go to Dhamma.org, it depends how you pronounce it, DHAMMA.org. It's a nonprofit global organization, and you can find these Dhamma centers all over the place.
Yeah, there's one in, I was telling you in our last call that there's one in Joshua Tree that I've really wanted to go out to do a Vipassana or Vipassana?
Vipassana, I guess it depends. Vipassana, it's sort of, it's weird how it's spelled, but that's how I've heard people pronounce it. I don't know. It's
we get the idea. I'll put a link in the show notes so people will be able to find it.
I recommend it. It's worth checking out, and you have to do it your first time as a 10-day. So you have to commit to 10 days. And
I love that. I absolutely love that. Like I really want to do it. So it's on my radar for sure. It was going to be my 50th birthday present to myself, but it as much as I'd like to think that I'm fully in charge of my own life and I can do really whatever I want, I'm really not. And you know, it has a big impact on my family's life if I'm gone for literally, I'm just checked out completely for. It's probably more like 12 days or 13 days.
It's almost closer to 2 weeks. Yeah, it's about 14 because you will want some time off.
Yeah, right.
To decompress. It's so crazy. Like I needed like 5 days after it just to try to make sense of things again because it was that warped of it was a great experience, but just trust me, you want to block off at least 2 weeks. You know? Right. Yeah.
So what going forward, what's your I mean, I kind of have an idea, but what would you say is what do you want?
Well, you know what? I'm going through that process right now, and I'm exploring what it is I want for the next phase of my life. And it is a lot more of what I'm already doing, but it's also getting much more specific in some of the areas that I want to explore. In particular, like how I work with people, how I coach people. I've started down the path of doing more courses so that they give people opportunities to do things a bit more on their own rather than a structured format where it's like we start on this day, we end on this day, giving people a bit more flexibility based on where their life is. But I've also wanted to get much clearer with the type of people I want to connect with. You know, like, and be very much more intentional with my time. I think the big thing for me is the last couple of years, I've said yes to so many things. Things come my way and I'm like, yes. And I've realized that I've spent a lot of time doing certain things that really, in the whole scope of things, it only detracted me and prevented me from truly achieving what I wanted sooner. And, so I want to be much more intentional. So moving into, next year, that's one of my big ambitions is to be more intentional with my time, much more mindful of what I'm doing, and be more selective about where I want to invest time specifically. Like time is that one asset, it's a limited resource, and I just want to be much more purposeful with it. So, I'm excited because I've got different ways I like to work with people, and I've started doing a lot more business coaching as well, like teaching other people how to build platforms like I've built for myself, and how to monetize it, and how to create coaching programs that get people results, but also create a lifestyle business that supports the lifestyle that you want, versus trying to conform to a certain, a career path and then having to conform our lifestyle to fit the career. I like to try to reverse that if I can. And so that's been a lot of fun. And that's sort of the direction for the next year.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I really appreciate you saying yes to this. And I don't know if this would have made the cut. I don't know if this would have made the cut, man.
Oh yeah.
If it had been midway through 2019, I don't know.
Like I told you before, I've known of you for quite a while because I know we have mutual connections in the industry, and we've both been around this industry for a while. And so when Eric reconnected us, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is just great. It was like it was meant to be. And
totally.
I just really appreciate the time and the opportunity to connect with you and your community. And I'm looking forward to there will be a day where either I'll be in Cali or you're going to be in Bali.
Absolutely. 100%.
Person, and it'll be great.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Well, thanks again. Oh, where do people find you? What's the best? I know you're all over the place. So
I am all over. The one thing of having a unique name, it's pretty SEO friendly because if you spell my name right, you will find me. You'll find me really easily. And it's just Dai, D-A-I, last name Manuel. I'm really active on Instagram and Facebook. And my blog, there's tons of content there. I think about 1,300 articles that are all lifestyle focused. So whether it be motivation, inspiration, education, nutrition, fitness, literally it's all there. And it's just, I like to direct people there. If you're looking for information just to start to get you on that path of making some change, it's a good resource. And you can reach out to me directly through that as well. But I'm accessible. Just give me about 48 hours to get back to you because I make a commitment always to respond within 2 days.
Unless you're in a Vipassana. Unless you're in a Vipassana.
Everybody was, but it's funny. My wife was on deck to answer any messages. Wow. Yeah, she was monitoring my social just to let people know I was on a Vipassana, and that's why I wouldn't get back to them. So
right.
We recognize. Listen, I told you when I was a teen, I extended my hand looking for help, and my life would be very different if people weren't there willing to extend the hand back in return. Right. And so I've made that a big part of what I do. And so when someone reaches out, I treat it very seriously.
That's
cool. Like it's a big deal. But I have one thing: don't be an asshole. And an asshole.
I love that. I love that.
And I'll leave it on that note. Just if you're going to ask a question, be prepared to get some stuff and an answer, but you got to do something with the answer. Because if I hear you ask that question again, you didn't do anything with you are now an asshole.
I love that. That's great.
Don't be an asshole.
Cool.
But
that's a good way to end the podcast. Don't be an asshole.
Perfect.
I love it. Hey, it's Andy, and thanks so much for listening. If you want to know more about what I'm learning each month, head over to andypetronic.com and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. If you were touched, moved, or inspired by anything you heard today, chances are someone else you know would be too. Please take a moment to think about who and send them a link to this episode. And if you're super stoked, please head over to iTunes to write a review. The best way to keep current on guests and episodes is to subscribe so that the latest one will automatically get delivered straight to your phone. The apps I used for this are Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or Pocket Casts. The Andy Petronic podcast is produced by our team, Winslow Jenkins, Becca Borowski, and Ernie Hurtado. Big thanks to Nikki Grudidaria for the artwork. You can find all of our episodes, links, and complete show notes at wholelifechallenge.com/podcast. I'm Andy Petronic. Thanks for listening.